Welcome to today's Explainer. We're diving into a massive and, frankly, completely chaotic physical logistical nightmare happening right now in Ontario, Canada. But we're also looking at the incredibly elegant digital solution that's stepping up to fix it. We are talking about the cross-border waste crisis, specifically what happens to construction wood. Now, a company called 905 Wood has completely flipped the script on this. They've built this thing they call the Digital Refinery. It takes chaotic, messy physical waste and transforms it into hyper-valuable, high-purity digital data. It's wild.
Okay, let's look at the local municipal reality first, just to set the stage before we zoom out to the whole continental problem. Check out Oxford County's 2025 waste generation and diversion metrics. They generated around 111,000 tons of waste. And hey, they managed to divert about 37,000 tons. That's a 45% diversion rate, leaving their local landfill with maybe 30 years of life. Solid local effort, right? But look at that orange sliver. That is nearly 33,000 tons exported to private, out-of-county landfills. It hints at a much larger dependency. Because what actually happens when those local facilities dry up and you have to just export your problems?
So here's our roadmap for today's Explainer. We'll start by looking at the continental trash pipeline, then we'll check out the looming capacity cliff, introduce the Sentient bridge solution, break down the edge AI intake operations, examine the cryptographic USMCA trade shields, and finally, look at the shift from liability to asset.
Part 1. The continental trash pipeline. Let's look at the actual flow of these materials.
To really grasp the genius behind what 905 Wood is doing, we have to understand the sheer geography of our garbage. Get this, Ontario exports a staggering 3.46 million tons of municipal solid waste over the border every single year. I mean, just picture a continuous, never-ending convoy of fully loaded semi-trucks rolling right across the Gordie Howe and Ambassador Bridges into Michigan 365 days a year. And why? Well, it's because Michigan's state tipping fee is sitting at a mere 36 cents a ton. To put that in perspective, Ontario's waste export literally makes up over 14% of absolutely everything buried in Michigan's landfills. It's a strategy entirely reliant on finding a cheap hole in the ground across the border.
Part 2. The looming capacity cliff. This is truly a race against the clock.
Relying on those cheap cross-border holes in the ground? Yeah, that strategy has a hard expiration date. Geopolitical trade frictions are one thing, but the real threats are entirely domestic. We've got 3 critical provincial dates here setting what's known as the forward price curve for waste disposal. First up, January 1, 2029, Ontario's R-Wood framework activates. That means landfilling clean wood becomes a literal regulatory violation. Then, by 2034, Ontario's landfill capacity is forecasted to be completely, functionally exhausted. No more space, period. And finally, 2036. That's when the crushing circle levy hits its scheduled maximum of $60 per ton on mixed waste. If you are a construction operator in Ontario, these 3 dates absolutely dictate the future cost of every single dumpster on your job site.
Part 3. The Sentient bridge solution. Decoupling the physical material from its metadata.
Faced with this massive capacity cliff, 905 Wood made a radical pivot. Their philosophy? One man's trash is another man's database. Think about it. If landfill airspace is becoming incredibly scarce and heavily penalized, the winning move isn't desperately searching for a cheaper landfill, it's refusing to use one altogether. They realize that in a highly regulated, carbon-constrained economy, the physical wood is just a low-value commodity. The actual value? It's in the data. The verified provenance, the strict regulatory compliance, the precise molecular characterization of that wood. They basically became a sentient bridge connecting totally chaotic construction sites directly to the high-purity demands of the biocarbon market. To pull this off, 905 Wood built this incredibly complex, interconnected mesh of 13 service nodes across 6 functional layers. But we can simplify it here. You've got Layer 1 for intake, which uses edge AI to classify the wood. Layer 2 handles the gritty physical logistics and fleet dispatch. Then, Layer 3 manages the strict regulatory compliance, stuff like OREG 347 auditing. And Layer 4? That decouples the billing so you can actually track the massive cost savings. Every single load of wood is processed through these autonomous service nodes, creating an absolutely unbreakable chain of custody.
Part 4. Edge AI intake operations. It's mud versus math.
Now, the crucial point here is how this hyper-precise data is actually manufactured right out there in the mud of a chaotic construction site. Because, let's be real, a database is only as good as the information you put into it. The workflow they've set up is brilliant. They use a Google Pixel 10 Pro running a Gemma 4 AI model on a Tensor G5 chip. The app literally classifies the wood in under 500 milliseconds, but, and this is key, it doesn't just rely on the AI. It forces a human in the loop hold-to-seal physical attestation. The operator literally holds the screen, the phone's haptic motor vibrates heavily, mimicking a physical wax seal, and a human validates the AI's classification. All of this metadata is secured locally in a SQLite wallet to prevent any tampering, and then it securely syncs up to the AlloyDB cloud. It's airtight.
Part 5. Cryptographic USMCA Trade Shields, Surviving the Actual Border.
So once that data is locked in, what happens when that truck actually rolls up to the US border, facing some seriously strict trade tariffs? Because surviving customs and border protection, that is half the battle. Well, instead of handing over some crumpled, handwritten manifest, the 905 Wood Refinery outputs a crisp, cryptographically hashed PDF passport. This proves the wood is a wholly obtained good. It's generating a 9-point USMCA Certificate of Origin under HS Code 3825.0. It's got validated GPS origin coordinates, the exact harmonized system classification, and even X-ray fluorescent atomic signatures, proving it's free of contaminants. When you present that to customs, it completely shields the load from heavy tariffs, easily bypassing a painful $1,140 Chapter 4 transshipment penalty per load. It's a fully audit-ready diversion packet.
Part 6. From liability to asset. The ultimate financial magic trick.
Let's bring this all back to the money. Let's look at the financial result of this data provenance, because this is what actually matters to the bottom line of any construction operator. By providing clean, AI-verified feedstock, 905 Wood completely inverts the dynamic. They transform a heavily penalized logistical burden into a highly incentivized circular bioeconomy asset. Look at the old model. You're dealing with mixed waste, constantly rising tipping fees, unpredictable border tariffs, and that looming $60 circle levy. In the new model, you're dealing with SaaS digital assets. 905 Wood isolates the mass and gamifies cost avoidance right on the user interface. You are literally zeroing out that levy by simply providing pristine verified data alongside your wood.
And when customers lock in these multi-year contract rates for 95 wood bins, they're not just paying for waste disposal anymore. They are actively buying insurance against those massive cost spikes we talked about with the 2030 capacity cliff. For example, look at the 1440-yard mothership. The contract sits at $3,250. That pricing is specifically engineered against the forward curve of the market. You're locking in a highly predictable operational cost today, specifically to avoid the absolutely crushing regulatory and scarcity fees coming tomorrow.
Here is where it gets really crazy. Because the Digital Refinery mathematically proves the pristine origin of the wood, that material can be diverted straight to a high-tech biocarbon facility. That generates carbon dioxide removal certificates worth up to $350 per ton. Just think about that for a second. You have chemically and mathematically transformed a liability, something that was going to cost you a small fortune just to bury in the ground, into a high-purity asset that yields real tradable carbon dividends.
So I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought, to reconsider exactly what is sitting in those dumpsters on your job site today. When the baseline cost of burying a manufactured product eventually exceeds the cost of the raw materials used to make it in the first place, the entire math of disposal just breaks. So the question is, in a carbon-constrained economy, are you going to keep paying to bury a physical liability, or are you ready to use the Sentient bridge to refine it into a digital asset? Thanks for joining me on this explainer today. I really hope it shifts how you look at the resources we toss away.